Hi,
Hi, Jugal.
how are you?
I'm good. Finally
Yeah,
found
good.
you.
Yeah, finally good to be face to face and chatting. There was a bit of a technical issue. I always face some.
Same here. So, absolutely. And I think we have a lot of people with us already.
I
So,
just want to
I
say
can,
hello to everybody. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me, and I hope you all are doing well.
right. So, I'll start with a little introduction. A very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have with us the multi-talented actor, director, writer, Jugal Hansraj. And also, we are super excited to bring you a storytelling session on Jugal's latest book, The Coward and the Sword, where Jugal will be reading out an excerpt from this title. Jugal needs no introduction. He's someone who started his career from the extraordinary film Masoom and then went on to act and direct. But how many of you knew that he's also a terrific writer who has mastered the art of weaving fascinating tales? So this is one of those books, and we are going to talk about this. Again, thank you, Jugal, for joining us. But before we start the session, let me ask you something, like something that always, while reading the book, it struck me many times. That is the character of Prince Kadis based on a real person, somebody you knew, or is it purely fictional?
Sorry, I'm just saying hi to some people I know, so some wonderful co-actors. One of my favorite co-actors, Rohit Saraf, has just joined. And hi, Rohit. Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody else for being here. And yeah, to answer your question, so it's not really based on a real person. It's obviously a fictional world. The whole, the prince and the kingdom is all imaginary and fictional, but obviously it's drawn from influences that I've seen around me, including myself. When I was a teenager, I had a lot of anxieties. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to stay home. So a lot of that has come from my personal life as well. And I've seen a lot of people around me, anxiety is a real thing. People face it, not necessarily if, even if things are seemingly comfortable and happy around them, still somebody can feel anxious and have some issues like that. So I guess this was my way of addressing all of that and saying that you can overcome everything, if you find the strength within. So the whole book is about that all the solutions and answers are within us. We just have to find them and awaken to that. So that was my way of trying to tell an entertaining story as well as trying to give a message somewhere for the young readers.
Right. So that's a beautiful thought that we have all the answers within. All right, so without further ado, let me request you to start the session. Jugal, over to you.
Yeah, so once again, thank you for being here. I'm quite actually nervous. I'm going to be reading out chapter three of my book, The, the Coward and the Sword. As you can see, it's published by HarperCollins India. And this book is truly a labor of love for me. Let me just say that I've been working on it for a long time. It wasn't commissioned. I just wrote it straight from the heart. And I feel very grateful and blessed that a wonderful publishing house like HarperCollins liked it and believed in it. And today it's out with some beautiful illustrations by Ruchi Shah. And I must say thank you to the team at HarperCollins, Tina Narang, and everybody else I've dealt with. It's been just great. So I'm going to read out chapter three. So chapters one and two, obviously, the book begins with an introduction of the main character, the prince, and the kingdom he lives in. So it's setting up the whole, the environment the book is set in. And then as chapter two progresses, you come to know what kind of person the prince is. And now I'm going to read out chapter three. So just to give you a little background. Okay, so here we go. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, so let me show you some of the illustrations on chapter three. The entourage left the hilly capital's winding and cobbled streets. As they passed through the city gates, all the citizens cheered and waved at their beloved king and at the prince who they hardly knew. To them, he was the reclusive royal. Not many knew of his nervous, shy nature, or even that he had been rather reluctant to join this trip. Young Shijo, on the other hand, was very excited and honored to be part of the excursion. For him, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see the entire kingdom, and with the king at that. Once they had toured the southern border and stayed there for a few days, the king planned to return to the castle for a short rest before taking a tour of the neighboring little island at the northern end of his kingdom to review his navy's war readiness. King Risho was hopeful that this trip and Shijo's company would help Kadis come out of his shell. Shijo and Kadis were in a separate carriage right behind the king's. Kadis was gloomily looking out of the window when he heard Shijo's voice. Prince Kadis, how often have you been to the army camps in the far south? Shijo asked enthusiastically. Never. This is my first time, Kadis replied flatly. Never? I'm surprised to hear that. If I may ask, how come? The prince sighed. I've seldom stepped out of the castle grounds, and on the few occasions I have, I've only ever been around the hilly capital town and never gone beyond its walls. Today is the first time I'm venturing out of the capital's gates. The first time in my life, actually. But it's your kingdom. Don't you ever feel like touring the villages and meeting all the people? Well, I do feel like stepping out sometimes, but I don't know how to explain. I'm not sure you'd understand. And with this, Kadis just sighed and, noticing Shijo's look of concern, gave him a weary smile. He then went back to looking out of the window of his carriage. As they passed the small villages, Kadis could see how much the citizens of Kofu loved their king. They held them all in such high esteem, including the prince. Kadis realized, with a growing sense of alarm, that the responsibility his father carried so ably on his broad shoulders would be his one day. At nightfall, the king and his party stopped at the last village that lay just before the small forest. Beyond it lay the army camps and the southern border. The council chiefs lived in the largest houses in the village and often played host to royal visitors. All the warm hospitality and respect afforded to the royal entourage made Kadis even more uncomfortable. The village council chief had planned a grand feast to welcome them to his home. It was not often that this village at the far end of the kingdom had the honor to host the king himself. The council chief and his wife were gracious hosts. They were happy to meet their nephew Shijo and gave him a warm welcome. Just before the feast for the royal party started, the chief respectfully leaned over to the king and pointed to the young girl standing in front of them. Your Majesty, I would like to introduce my daughter Sarah. King Risho smiled warmly at her as she bowed and shook his hand confidently. Pleased to meet you, young lady. Sarah was a beautiful, self-assured girl. She had a soft and pretty face with fiery brown eyes and lustrous auburn hair. She wore her beauty lightly and was dressed in simple but smart gowns for the feast. Shijo and Sarah already knew each other as they were cousins, but Sarah was happy to meet the rest, including the strange and shy prince. King Risho made the introductions. Sarah, meet my son, Prince Kadis. Kadis hesitatingly shook her hand. Sarah gave him a friendly smile, which put him slightly at ease. He looked around the crowd and slowly retreated into a corner. As Sarah and Shijo walked away after everyone had been introduced, Sarah leaned over to him and whispered, He's certainly not what I thought a prince should be. Okay. I've never met anyone so quiet and reticent, she said. Shijo nodded in agreement. Yes, that's what I thought too. He seemed a little sad, but I guess I would be sad too if I didn't have any friends. But although he's shy, he seems to have a kind and gentle disposition. That's the feeling I got, she said. Anyway, I'm glad to have made his acquaintance, Sarah said happily. In the course of the evening, the king was greatly impressed by Sarah's views on the kingdom. The chief was a bit nervous when Sarah started voicing her opinions, and he wasn't sure she knew how to be diplomatic, but the king felt She was a smart young lady who was refreshingly honest. He even thought her opinions and suggestions had merit in them. Young Kadis, however, found the girl to be quite strange. Behind her angelic face lay quite a passionate personality, and she was unlike any girl he had ever met. When the feast ended, King Risho said, "Sarah, I would like to invite you to join us on our tour of the army camp and be our guest at the army cantonments." Sarah couldn't believe her ears. An invitation from the king himself. King Risho turned to her father. "With your permission, of course. It's only half a day's ride from here, and I assure you she will be well looked after." The council chief readily agreed. What an honor for young Sarah. On her part, Sarah was very excited to be part of the entourage and happy that she would get to know more about the shy prince. So that's my chapter 3. And now we move on to chapter 4. So for that, please read the book. And, I would love to know what you all think. And as I said, it truly is a labor of love. And I hope, you all get a chance to buy it and read it and, share the story with your young family members. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jugal, thank you so much for this wonderful reading. It transported us to an altogether different world. I'm sure all our readers would like to know what happens next.
I hope
So,
so. And yeah, so it's this is this part of the story is we've just, as I said, we've introduced the main character, the prince and his family, and now another main character has been introduced, Sarah, who's very important to the story. And from this point on, the story really kicks off to what happens next and the big adventure, and that they go on. I don't want to say more, but yeah, it's this is in fact a very exciting part from where the story really kicks off. So this I thought would be a good chapter to read out.
absolutely. I think it sets the scene. And, so do, for all our readers, do grab a copy of the book to know how Prince Kadis discovers the courage within. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here, taking time out, and I do hope you read the book and enjoy it. Thank you.